Meeting of the State Government Committee to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Decker. Here. Representative Duplessis.
Here.
Representative Flood. Representative
Here.
Flood. Thank
Here.
you.
That was Flood. Here.
Thank you. Representative
Thank you.
Graham. Here. Representative Heath.
Here.
Representative Heverin.
Present in the room.
Representative Johnson.
Here, in the room.
Representative Maddox. Representative Mentor. Representative Nemes. Representative Smith. Representative Stevenson.
Here in my annex room.
Thank you. Representative Tate. Here in the room. Representative Tipton. Representative Upchurch. Representative Wheatley.
Here.
Representative Bowling.
Here.
Representative Bratcher. Representative Miller.
Here. We have a quorum and are duly constituted. And we are going to go in order. Members, please remember all the rules, silencing your phones, and if you're on Zoom, unmute yourself if you wish to speak. And otherwise, we are going to move right on the agenda. First item is House Joint Resolution 77, sponsored by Speaker Osborne, accompanied by his guest who needs no introduction, President Stivers. There is a committee sub. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting the sub, please say aye. Opposed, like sign. Sub is before us. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to present House Joint Resolution 77 to you today. I appreciate President Stivers being here as well, because I do believe that this is a resolution that speaks to the institution of the legislature and the legislative authority that we have, and the importance of equal branches of government and separation of powers. And I think that this resolution addresses some of those things. As I think all of you got the sub last night, House Joint Resolution deals with some of the executive orders that have been issued by the governor. And by and large, this resolution is in response to and a result of the fact that Franklin Circuit Court has enjoined Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 2, and House Bill 1. Those decisions will likely not be made while we are in session. We will likely leave March 30th without knowing the result of that. And in recognition of that, there are some executive orders, even though we don't know what's going to be happening with, in some respects, 60, 90, 180 days down the road. We do know that there are some of the executive orders, and obviously there's been some criticism of certain executive orders, but some of the executive orders are critical to businesses and individuals across the Commonwealth. And it is important that we resolve those and extend those appropriately. In the governor's lawsuit in Franklin Circuit Court, which again enjoined Senate Bills 1, 2, and House Bill 1, Judge Shepard himself suggested, Judge Shepard himself suggested that that we get together, that we communicate with the governor communicate with us, and try to find resolution to some of these executive orders. President Stivers and I, back probably a month ago, sent a letter to the governor asking for input in which of those executive orders he would like extended for longer periods of time. We received a response that was not conducive to finding an agreement, and so that was what led us to House Joint Resolution 77, which allows certain orders to expire, pending court decisions, obviously, but it does recognize that there are some some orders that do need to be extended. Those orders that are going to be extended are laid out in Section 2 of the committee sub. And Section 3 of the committee sub identifies those items that will be extended for a shorter period of time, for 30 days, pending action on the administrative regulation process. In other words, things that would normally have to go through the administrative regulations process, they would be extended until that process is allowed to happen as prescribed by Senate Bill 2. If there are any specific questions about specific orders, I can get to those. Again, I know y'all had the sub last night, so you probably had a chance to go through that. But with that, I'll turn it over to President Stivers.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, appreciate working with the Speaker on this. I truly believe this is in conformity with what Judge Shepard has said and told the governor to file those executive orders that were actually in place, then to send us those that he felt needed to be extended. But I also want to go back, and I'm going to look at Representative Nemes. Younger minds generally have better memory. I think it was the Acre case where the Supreme Court said the legislature, pursuant to statute, has the ability to declare these executive orders over. That is from the Kentucky Supreme Court, if I am not badly mistaken, within their 107-page opinion. So to that extent, we can declare them over per the Kentucky Supreme Court. We can also extend them. So this is what this joint resolution does. And as an institutional show of support between the House and the Senate, I'm here to speak to the resolution with the Speaker to say we are here ready, willing, and able to work with the administration. And here is the example per the request of Judge Shepard in the Franklin Circuit Court.
Again, Mr. Chairman, this is not necessarily an inclusive list. They were items that we felt like, again, were important. That regardless of other factors, these would be things that would deal with professional licensing, with fines that are being waived in certain cases against businesses that are shut down, price gouging statutes, the suspension of any copay for vaccinations, for COVID testing, things of that nature are included in this. And then many of the licensure requirements that are being waived are addressed in Section 3, which would again have to go through the regular administrative regulations process, but does put those off for 30 days.
Very good. We have a question. Representative Wheatley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for both bringing this. It is obviously it portends it's going to do well in the Senate when the president of the Senate is here, and that's really good. And my question is really a process question, an institutional question related to what is the effect of a joint resolution versus a legislative bill, and what can be done in those bills. For instance, if we had a really big bill like a new pension system bill, could it be brought as a House or a joint resolution the same? What is the effect of a joint resolution as opposed to a legislative bill?
A joint resolution does carry the effect of law with it, but it does not codify that. And so these would be things they're like temporary orders that don't necessarily need to be codified. So therefore, a resolution, while carrying the effect of law, does not write them into statute.
Motion on the resolution.
We have a motion and a second on the resolution. Are there any other questions? Representative Nemes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say just real quickly, thank you to the Speaker first, and then the speaker comes first in this committee, Mr. President.
I understand that.
But
Thank you, wise gentleman from Jefferson.
when I was until I need a bill in the Senate passed, Mr. Speaker. So when I was
Mr. Chair,
coming,
can I respond to that at a point in time?
No quids.
when I was coming back to Frankfort, we're talking to my constituents. I was worried. I was worried that this General Assembly was going to overreact. We were hearing a lot from our constituents who were frustrated and angry, and they still are. But we also understand that the pandemic is real. So I was worried we were going to overreact. Senate Bill 1, Senate Bill 2, House Bill 1 were not overreactions. They were responsible. They were measured. They were getting us back and getting us back in a responsible way. This resolution is in that vein. And so I want to thank you all for, one, taking it seriously and getting us back to school, getting us back to business, getting us back to life. At the same time, being respectful and understanding that the pandemic is real. And it has killed a lot of our people. So I just want to say this is a measured approach. And from the suburbs of Jefferson County and South Odom, thank you for standing up for our people and our businesses and getting them back to life and to work, while at the same time not overreacting and just wiping it all out. I think this is the way it should have been done. I wish the governor would have worked with us on this, but this is good government at its finest. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. No other questions? Madam Secretary, please call the roll. Oh, we did have a question. Representative Graham. Sorry, I didn't see you.
I'm not a lawyer, and so I'm just asking the question. What happens if we have a disaster? And Senator, you were here when Eastern Kentucky was hit with tornadoes back then in 2010, I think, or 2008. And a disaster takes place. Is the governor still going to be allowed under this particular House Joint Resolution if something happens and many of us are unable to get back to Frankfort to make decisions? How will this be handled with, if we pass this House Joint Resolution? Will it impact his ability to deal with that issue while we're not in session and unable to come to session in an emergency?
Representative Graham, this resolution does not speak to that. Conversely, Senate Bill 1 and Senate Bill 2 did speak to that, and it contemplated what would happen going forward, not in any way, shape, or form limiting the governor's ability to declare a state of emergency. As a matter of fact, this document acknowledges that there's an ongoing state of emergency, and I think that it's important to acknowledge that we're still in an emergent situation. There are many reasons, whether it be federal funding, whether it be use of National Guard to administer testing and control crowd control for vaccines. There are reasons to do that. Those bills specifically spoke with how the governor must engage the legislature in that process, and I think very appropriately so. Gave the governor 30 days before he had to bring us back in to act on that state of emergency, just as we are doing here. This since we are in session, we have the ability to have that input. We have the ability to affect policy, to affect our constituents, and effectively represent those constituents in a very well-reasoned, thought-out manner, acknowledging that this is a changing environment, and that is what we're doing in this particular bill, is showing exactly how it would work in any other situation. And we may take up something before we leave here, quite frankly, that will deal with the ongoing emergencies in East Kentucky with the flooding and ice storms. We likely will take those measures up additionally to again show that this body is serious about taking care of our constituents, taking care of Kentuckians, and working responsibly with the executive branch.
We speak often in terms that we understand as legislators, but for instance, practical application, driver's licenses, you did not have to get a renewal because of an executive order. We are extending that executive order, I think, in one of these. Continuing educations, they were suspended during this pandemic. This is a concrete example that we're extending the orders. We're not stopping orders. We're extending them because we see the need and the rationale for those orders being in place and continuing.
Representative Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you both gentlemen for your work on this. It's very serious business, very important. I just had a very brief question on page 4 of the sub, under letter B, where it requires state agencies on point 2 to provide and conduct services by mail, internet, phone, and or video conferencing. Would state agencies be allowed to no longer provide in-person services, or can it be a combination of both? That I was just kind of hoping for some clarity on whether or not folks could be able to return for in-person services at state agencies.
No, actually, if you read the very first line of that, Representative Maddox, it encourages. It does not require that they not do in person. It encourages uses of alternative technologies, virtual technologies when possible, but certainly does not. It eliminates the ban on in-person meetings.
Thank you, sir.
That's particularly was brought to light by Speaker Pro Tem Mead on the child services portion of the executive orders.
Representative Duplessis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just Representative Nemes said everything I was going to say, and almost as well as I would have said it. So I might not say too much, but yeah. But I do want to thank the gentleman for this resolution. I would like to answer the question of the gentleman from Woodford, or excuse me, from Franklin. It's not just 30 days. If the governor does an emergency action for a flood, which would be acceptable, obviously, anybody in this room, if that more than 30 days is needed, he doesn't have to call us back if the local county government approves it. And that's an important distinction to understand, that the local county government can extend that 30 days if they need to for their own needs. So we can't forget that. It's time to get Kentucky back to work. It's time for us to do what other states have already started doing. And so I do appreciate this bill or this resolution and look forward to supporting it.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Please call the roll.
Representative Bowling?
Yes.
Representative Bratcher?
Yes.
Representative Decker?
Yes.
Representative Duplessis?
Yes.
Representative Flood?
No.
Thank you. Representative Graham?
I'm voting no, and I want to explain my vote. And I understand.
1 minute, please.
Yes, I understand what the two leaders are trying to do, but I'm voting no because throughout this whole session, we've been trying to erode the responsibilities of the executive branch of government. And I'm concerned about that, not just for this governor, but for the next governor and the governors beyond. So I'm going to no. Thank you.
Representative Heath?
Yes.
Representative Heverin?
Yes.
Representative Johnson?
Yes.
Representative Maddox?
Yes.
Representative Mentor?
No.
Representative Nemes?
Yes.
Representative Smith?
Please, 2 minutes.
30 seconds. I appreciate Senator and President Stivers and the Speaker. It seemed like the first week we took on a big task on getting some things out to help our people back home. I go back home and explain what all we done for them. The hard part is explaining that none of it's held water. So now we're putting something else through, and I'm hoping this holds some water and that we're able to go back home and let our people know that we're up here trying to do some things to help them. And I appreciate this, and it's a yes vote. Yes.
Representative Stevenson?
No.
Thank you. Representative Tate? Yes. Representative Tipton?
Yes.
Representative Upchurch?
Yes.
Representative Wheatley?
I'll briefly explain. I am going to vote no. I still feel like we're in the throes, coming from working in emergencies. It's been a year for a lot of this, and it just feels like we're just a little bit too close. I appreciate a lot of the wording in here. I appreciate this short section in Section 5 that says that the governor can still do things if substantially similar facts have changed. So that gives him the opportunity to do that. A lot of crafting went into this that I can appreciate, but I just feel like we're still too close. No.
Representative Miller.
Yes, matter passes with favorable expression. Same two shall pass on the floor. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. You certainly may. We honor the chamber at the north end of the hall.
Yes. He may be the speaker of this house, but I know who the speaker of my house is, and she's at home right now.
Well said. Thank you. Next bill before us is House Bill 569, sponsored by Speaker Pro Tem Meade. Thank you. Pull the mask off and the microphone up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As you've got the bill before you, it's a relatively simply worded bill, less than 1 page. And what this says is basically that the President of the Senate, on behalf of the Senate, or the Speaker of the House, on behalf of the House, or the President and the Speaker combined, on behalf of the General Assembly, may intervene on any action filed in a court challenging the constitutionality and the validity of any legislative act or Kentucky statute, executive order, administrative regulation, or order by any cabinet or department. Now, we have all heard many times the courts ask the question, what is legislative intent when trying to decipher what to do on a bill or a challenge of a bill, whatever it may be. And all of us as legislators should be concerned that potentially in that courtroom there could be 2 branches of government debating on the third branch without the third branch being there. And so this will clarify some things on what was meant by that bill when the challenge of constitutionality, or what was meant by legislative intent when we passed this bill, if the Speaker or the President were allowed to intervene. So this bill also, in Section 1, as I said, allows the intervention on behalf of the bodies. Section 2 makes it clear that there is no waiver of immunity or privilege. And Section 3 reaffirms that all matters of legislative immunity and privilege shall be interpreted as broadly as constitutionally allows and not waived unless the waiver is specific and explicit. This bill makes it very clear, as does prior U.S. Supreme Court precedents, that legislative immunity and legislative privilege are to be interpreted as broadly as constitutionally permissible unless specifically and explicitly waived. Mr. Chairman, that's what the bill does.
Motion on the bill.
We have a motion and a second on the bill. Are there any questions? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bowling?
Yes.
Representative Bratcher?
Yes.
Representative Decker?
Yes.
Representative Duplessis?
Yes.
Representative Flood?
Pass.
Thank you. Representative Graham?
No, I looked at this initially, Representative Meade, and I thought I was going to vote no on it. I'm not going to vote on it today, but as I look at this and go over it, it has some factors in here that I have to say I agree with, but I'm going to pass on it right now. When I get on the floor, it may be different.
Representative Heath?
Yes.
Representative Heverin? Yes. Representative Johnson?
Yes.
Representative Maddox? Yes. Representative Mentor?
Pass, but reserved to vote yes on the floor.
That was a pass. Yeah. Representative Nemus?
Yes.
Representative Smith? Yes. Representative Stevenson?
Pass.
Thank you. Representative Tate? Yes. Representative Tipton?
Yes.
Representative Upchurch?
Yes.
Representative Wheatley?
Yes.
Representative Miller?
Yes. Matter passes with favorable expression. Same two shall pass on the floor. Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem Meade.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
The next bill we'll be taking up is House Bill 217. Representative Maddox, are you ready? Thank you. And there is a committee sub on this, I understand.
Motion on sub.
We have a motion and a second on the sub. All in favor of accepting sub, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Sub is before us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 217 is a cleanup of Senate Bill 1 and includes our legislative response to each of the unaddressed points from the Supreme Court's decision in Beshear v. Zachary. It modifies the statement of legislative intent to reflect that government power in an emergency is a delegation of legislative authority, not inherent to the executive branch. It removes the laundry list of specific emergencies that the court read as justification for expansive powers for COVID, and makes clear that emergency powers are delegated not just to protect life and property, but also the liberties of the people. It modifies a statutory section that allowed the governor to control all local emergency management services statewide for all purposes whenever he deemed necessary, and limits that power to times and purposes authorized by the amended KRS 39A.100.
Motion on the bill.
It modifies.
We have a motion on the bill. We have a second. Representative Heath. Like to continue?
If we've got a motion and a second.
Do we have any questions? If there are questions, Representative Nemes.
I'm sorry, I hate to do this. I want to hear more about it.
Sure.
Please proceed.
Thank you. It modifies KRS 211.025 to limit the Cabinet for Health and Family Services power to supervise local health departments and do all other things reasonably necessary to protect and improve the health of the people. It modifies KRS 211.180 to limit the power of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services to act other than through properly promulgated regulations and not just administrative fiats. Each of the points was specifically addressed by the court to justify unlimited emergency power in the executive branch in situations the executive unilaterally determines to be an emergency. Without these changes, the court will be able to point to its previous decision and the legislature's inaction as evidence of legislative intent that the governor's executive powers remain expansive. This bill also is a vehicle to address any other emergency powers issues that arise in the waning days of the session, such as a response to the Franklin Circuit Court's injunction against House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 1. And that's all I have.
Very good. Thank you for the complete answer. Representative Nemes, is that sufficient for your needs? Thank you. We have Representative Wheatley has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think these are pretty simple, straightforward. Page 1 has, it's section 1, has a large strikeout of all the potential emergencies, not limited to. Is there some reason we struck all of those?
Again, that goes back to removing that laundry list of specific emergencies that the court read as specific justification.
I'm sorry. My question was, is there a reason we removed them from this statute, though? I mean, before they're in there as a not limited to, and these are some examples, and now we're striking those.
Well, I think that it's important to bear in mind that not only would we have said that originally in 1998, whenever the statute was created, that we couldn't have necessarily foreseen an example or, a year-long state of emergency, and that perhaps it was more so intended for more like ice storms and floods, tornadoes, things of that nature. But also in the future, we have no way of being able to forecast what could possibly constitute a state of emergency. So I think that removing this language, it doesn't constrain us to certain applications, but also prevents courts from misinterpreting some of these justifications.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have another question, unless...
Sure, you can have a follow-up. Nobody else is in the queue right now.
Right. And this is a specific question to a line on page 5 in section 3 in the middle, where it does affect the Health and Family Services, and we strike, and I'll read the line, it says, except as otherwise provided by law, the Cabinet shall administer all provisions of law relating to public health, shall enforce all public health laws and all regulations of the Secretary, shall supervise and assist all local boards of health departments. And then we strike this next line. Shall do all things reasonably necessary to protect and improve the health of the people. just an explanation why we want to strike that line?
We have an administrative regulation process that can and should be relied upon to promulgate regulations pertaining to public health, and I think that is perfectly sufficient to meet our public health needs, and that's why that language here was struck, because we don't want to go above and beyond that and make sure that we don't have that supervisory role in the administrative regulation process.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bowling,
Yes.
Representative Bratcher,
Yes.
Representative Decker,
Yes.
Representative Duplessis,
Yes.
Representative Flood.
No.
Thank you. Representative Graham.
My vote. I'm voting no, and I think what the cabinet has done over the period of time that we've been in this pandemic shows that they need to have those things in place so that they can address that. And all you have to do is look at the numbers here in Kentucky versus our neighbors to the north and neighbors to the south. Because of what they have done during this yearly coronavirus, I think they ought to be applauded for the actions that they've taken. And I see this as a detriment to the cabinet in the future to be able to handle anything that would come about as we just experienced over this last year. I vote no.
Representative Heath.
Yes.
Representative Heverin. Yes. Representative Johnson.
Yes.
Representative Maddox.
Yes.
Representative Mentor.
Briefly explain my vote. We don't need to make it any harder for the cabinet to do their jobs. They've had a Herculean task this year, and we're safer than people in surrounding states. It's a no.
Representative Nemes.
Briefly explain. In a time when we have a pandemic, it's important. It's extra important that the law is followed. All this bill does is it says that the powers that have been delegated by the legislature shall be followed. And the reason that we're taking out the shall do all other things reasonably necessary, so forth and so on, is because that is, as they say in some places, broad as a boulevard. It can be anything that anybody wants it to be. And what we're saying is the law that exists you have to follow. If they want more, call us into special session. That's all it says. All the regulations, all the statutes that give them authority, none of those have been changed. It just makes sure that the laws are being followed. I think this is a good bill. It's necessary to follow the law at all times, including during a pandemic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Representative Smith. Yes. Representative Stevenson.
No.
Thank you. Representative Tate.
Yes.
Representative Tipton.
Yes.
Representative Upchurch.
May I explain my vote?
Please.
2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the bills that's been before us today. I think this goes along with some of the things that we've tried to accomplish as a legislature. You know, we've heard about, government keeping us safe, and that just flies in the face, I think, of my personal responsibility. Government did not keep me safe during this pandemic. I kept myself safe. I used common sense, given the guidelines that was put before me, and so you listen to the guidelines, but you don't have government telling you what you have to do. And I feel like that's a personal decision for me and my family. We follow the guidelines, as best we could, but when we make decisions about our own personal safety, that's left up to the individual, not someone sitting in a chair in Frankfurt. Thank you.
Yes.
Representative Wheatley.
No.
Representative Miller.
Yes. Measure passes with favorable expression. Same two shall pass on the floor. And thank you for all your work on 217. I know you started working on it 8 or 9 months ago, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
The final matter to come before the committee today is Senate Bill 169, sponsored by Senator McDaniel, and he is accompanied by a guest, needs no introduction for the House, Representative Blanton. So, welcome, gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman, I move committee sub.
We have a motion and a second on the sub. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Sub is before us. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for hearing this bill today. We're remiss to start out without saying thank you, first and foremost, to Representative Blanton, who brought this issue forward last year. Also to yourself, Mr. Chairman, for your work on this. Representative Duplessis has put in yeoman's effort as well. As we know, bills that clear the Senate, by and large, are perfect, but sometimes there's some adjustment. No, they are all a work in progress, and we appreciate everyone's diligent effort, to include that of the Fraternal Order of Police and the Kentucky League of Cities, as we have advanced this cause. This is one of those bills that the why is far more important than the what. I'm briefly going to touch on the what. What this bill does is it increases the disability pension for those who are permanent and totally disabled from a 25% maximum to a 75% maximum, along with 10% for each dependent child. Extends health insurance to the surviving family. It is extended to all anyone who's currently qualified as permanent and total, which there have been a total of 12 people in the last 10 years to have achieved that designation. Moving forward, it will be anyone in a hazardous system or anyone in a non-hazardous system whose job duties could reasonably be defined by the retirement system as meeting the definition of hazardous in the Kentucky retirement system, Kentucky revised statutes, forgive me. Also, it includes reporting and auditing requirements agreed upon by all parties. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to the other folks at the table.
Very good. Representative Blanton, did you want to speak, or have your guest?
We're going to have our guest speak first.
All right, please introduce yourself. And
hi, I'm Kathy Heitch. I'm wife of Detective Daryl Heitch. First, I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to talk. I want to thank Representative Blanton and Senator McDaniel. Thank you so much for sponsoring this bill, and all those who are co-sponsoring.
Yes, please pull a mic up so everyone can hear you. I want to make sure everyone at home can hear you.
Sure. This year will be 18 years since I met my husband. At the time, he was a U.S. soldier. He had served in the Gulf War. He had a great career and was very proud and very excited to be a soldier. A few years after that, he became a police officer in Louisville. Equally loved that job. He began on the beat. He switched to the Viper unit after a few years, which fought the most violent of criminals. And then he moved to the narcotics office, which is where he was when he got shot. It was a very dangerous job from the beginning. I would hear his stories each night. Sometimes it would be early, sometimes it would be 3, 5 o'clock in the morning. He would come home so excited about what he had done that night and what the other guys had done with him. And I would listen to each of these stories, knowing that every one of them and every night was just as dangerous as the night before. And I was excited to hear them, but I was mostly excited because I got to hear his Velcro that night. On February 1st, 2018, it was a normal day for both of us, and 2 detectives came to school to pick me up. They took me to the parking lot to tell me that my husband had been shot twice in the head on a drug bust. Now, I was terrified because we all know what that usually means. That usually means that person is not going to survive. The 3 of us headed to the hospital, hoping to get there. When I got there, it was just surrounded by police officers. 2 met me at the door and took me directly to his room, where I saw the most horrendous of sights. No spouse should ever see their spouse that looked like that. There was blood everywhere. He had a bullet hole in his forehead, a bullet hole in his cheek, and a hole where it had exited back here. Now, the good news was we had a doctor come in that said he was probably going to survive and do the best to recover. So that day, we were pretty happy because he was going to survive. But we didn't know what we were going to be facing in the future. Every doctor that we have gone to, the first thing they say is that he is a miracle. It was definitely by God's grace that he survived. But he did have some injuries. He has severed nerves. He has shrapnel in his head, so he cannot have an MRI, which may help with other treatments. But the doctors have all done the best they could. They've given him therapies, they've given him medications, they've given him any treatment that they possibly can. Even doing a jaw surgery last summer where they cut his jaw completely off to try to get it to grow back comfortably to give him a little bit less pain in his head. He had his mouth wired shut for 2 months. It was not a fun recovery. He did start the recovery progress and it continued. until January when he went to see a workman's comp dentist. While he was in that chair, hearing that it had not recovered yet and that his jaw was still very, very fragile, he got a call from a superior who said that he needed to come pick up a letter from LMPD. In that letter, it said that he could either come back to work without any restrictions, he could medically retire, or he would be terminated. Well, through research we had done before, we knew that medical retirement meant 25% of a police officer's base pay. Now, this is a man who worked overtime, who worked off duty, who was security at Churchill Downs and security at another country club. He worked many, many extra hours to not only provide for our family, but to make sure that we wanted for nothing. And now he was faced with 25% of his base pay for almost giving his life. So now you can add heart and soul to the injuries that he was facing. He was devastated. He not only cannot go back to the job he loved, but he's not going to be able to provide for his family. It was crushing. He was told by a retirement system that he was worth more dead than alive. After taking out insurance and any other fees, he would make $10,176 a year for our family. Or he could go back to a police department if he was fully recovered, but they had already told him he could not come back unless he had no restrictions. That's really not a good choice to be faced with. This bill is extremely important to us, but it is also extremely important to all first responders, police officers, firefighters, EMS, because they all go out there every day in a dangerous world, all of them. It's also important for future firefighters, EMS, and police officers. Who is going to want to do those jobs, knowing that if you are injured and permanently and totally disabled, your family is not going to be taken care of? So it's very important to know that each of them take care of us every day in a very dangerous, dangerous world. I think we have a responsibility to take care of them, especially when the cost is minimal. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second, and we have accepted the sub. Representative Blanton.
I will hold my comments to the floor since we have a motion and a second. I'm not going to belay this.
Senator, would you like to say anything further? I want to give you all the opportunity you need.
No, I think I've said all I need to say. This is extremely important, and I really appreciate, and so does Daryl, all the nice emails that we've gotten from so many legislators. So I do want to thank all of
Thank you, and thank you for your family's sacrifice.
I'm the fourth wheel over here. I just want to say thank you to everybody. My name's Ryan Strahl, Governmental Affairs Director for the FOP. We've enjoyed all the conversations. Thank you for all the support, and we also want to thank several different organizations that we worked with to get to this point. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Wheatley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here. I'm a retired firefighter myself, and I have represented one of the 12 people who have been granted this benefit over the 10-year period. Only 12 people in the last 10 years. And the difference is, and I won't get into this too much because of the tremendous sacrifice that we know all of our first responders make, but he has no visible thing that's happened to him. He has had a medical incident, and to protect his privacy, he has many members within the fire service who were wondering, is he really something wrong with him? And that's the scope, or that's the difference between the people who are permanently disabled and can no longer perform their job. They're not permitted medically to return to work, and sometimes must live through some of the real financial hardships. So thank you for bringing this. Thank you to the representatives and the senator. I appreciate it. There are some questions I might have related to some of the technical things, how this thing might work, because I want to inform the firefighters who I represent. I still represent all the firefighters in the state of Kentucky, the professional firefighters. So thank you for bringing this.
Representative Johnson.
I sort of just want to echo his Representative Wheatley's comments. I just want to say thank you. And if I could vote for 100%, I would. If I could vote for 150%, I would. Again, just thank you.
Seeing no other questions or comments, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bowling?
Yes.
Representative Bratcher?
And I'd like to explain my vote. Thank you guys for coming. I know you worked hard on this, Representative Blanton and Senator McDaniel and Mr. Straw and Drew back there. But, ma'am, I really appreciate you coming. You know, I've been to many places, from schools to Ford factory. Your husband's name comes up many times over the last few, I guess, a year, and you have many fans. He does at Ford. They would come up and say, "Do something for Darrell," and I'm glad that we're taking this first step. I know that this summer has been a terrible time for the policemen in Louisville. I live in Jefferson County, and I'm glad that we can do something positive for the police and for you. So I vote yes. Thank you.
Representative Decker?
Yes, explain my yes.
Please.
I do appreciate so much y'all bringing this. And as I listened to you speak, I had this overwhelming feeling that your husband took those bullets for me and my family, for all of Kentucky. The thin blue line is so thin. And I'm so thankful for it. And I'm honored to be on this committee to be able to vote yes. And thank you for your testimony.
That's a yes.
Representative Duplessis?
Briefly explaining my vote.
Please.
First of all, I wish your husband was here for me to thank him. But please do. And I want to thank you also for standing by his side. Lesser people maybe would have run from such a daunting task. But today, I, along with, I believe, a lot of others, are going to stand beside you and vote for this bill, and I vote yes.
Representative Flood? Representative Flood? Representative Graham?
I'm going to vote yes for this, and I applaud you for coming forth. And I'm happy to vote yes. This is my only yes vote today. The only concern, but this is a worthy yes vote. The only thing that I'm concerned about, and I was not able to ask the question, was that it started off, Senator, with non-hazardous and hazardous, but the committee sub took the non-hazardous out, and I don't know if I'm able to ask that question, but I'm thinking out loud in terms, and once the roll call is made, if you can explain that, I'd appreciate that.
In this case, Representative Blanton, I think you probably are best equipped to respond to that. If you wish, if you don't wish, that's fine.
Sure, I don't mind at all. Representative Graham, the purpose in that was to narrow down the focus specifically to our first responders as to who this was originally thought of and designed for. But in Kentucky, not all first responders, their agencies or their governments participate in hazardous duty. Some of them participate in non-haz. So the reason non-haz was originally included was to get those first responders. And so we were able to come up with language specifically dealing with the first responders and kind of carving them out and making sure that they got what the people in hazardous got, and also the cost would have been much greater if we just left it in general of non-haz as well.
Thank you. And you're a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Continue.
Representative Heath?
Yes.
Representative Heverin?
Yes, quickly explain my vote. I want to echo the comments of my colleagues. Thank you for being brave to come and advocate. I greatly appreciate it. I know that we do too here in the General Assembly, and what an honor and commitment to your husband. Please thank him for his service, and as we all know here in this room, you more than others whenever you sign, a family member signs up for public service, it's a family ordeal. It's not just the person. And so thank you for being brave today and sharing your testimony. I proudly vote yes, and I will continue to keep your family in my prayers.
Representative Johnson,
Yes.
Representative Maddox,
Yes.
Representative Mentor,
Briefly explain my yes vote.
Please.
Thank you for sharing your family story, and I'm so terribly sorry. And thank you to Senator McDaniel, Representative Blanton for bringing this, and to my colleague, Representative Wheatley, who, represents first responders as well. So thank you. Yes.
Representative Namus, Representative Smith, Representative Stevenson,
Briefly explain my vote.
Please.
After serving in the military, policemen, first responders, and it's the whole family that gives their all so that this country thrives, this community thrives. And the difference that I like to point out is most of the time in the military, I knew when I was going into battle. A police officer goes into battle every day, and every day is a question for the family. What's going to happen today? So I vote for this because it makes no sense that we don't protect those who protect us.
Thank you.
Representative Tate, Representative Tipton,
Yes.
Representative Upchurch,
Yes.
Representative Wheatley,
Yes.
Representative Miller.
A resounding yes. Matter passes with favorable expression. Same too shall pass on the floor. Thank you so much all for bringing this bill and being here, and give our best wishes to your husband, man.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
No other matters to come before the body. We are adjourned.